Have you ever wondered, are any of those meal kit delivery services actually any good, but not want to spend your hard earned money on a box that might taste like ass? Yeah, me too. And that's what I'm here for today. I tried 4 different meal delivery services so you don't have to. I have reviewed them. I have given you my opinions as a nutrition and personal trainer coach, as a nutrition coach and personal trainer, all in this video, just so you can take a look at these 4 companies and hopefully maybe more companies in the future if this video does well, and say, hey, I might want to give that one a try. And I am talking about how much they cost against each other, the taste of each meal, the macros on a lot of the meals, and what I felt as an individual who struggles a lot with different textures and really things that reheat in a microwave in general when it comes to my food. And those 4 companies that I'll be reviewing today are Factor 75, Hummus Fit, Trifecta, and a local company near and dear to my heart, Beast Coast Nutrition, to represent the local companies you can use in your local community to help out those small businesses that might be better for you than some of these big moguls. As the meal kit service starts to grow, we went from getting all of the ingredients to cook at home to getting ready for you meals delivered to our doors. And that's what this video is going to focus on. Pop in the microwave, ready for you in 2 minutes style meals, because I like to make things as convenient as possible for my clients. So if I can find a company that is a reasonable price for them to be able to utilize on a regular basis or even as an offhand basis in busy times, that will help them keep in line with their goals for the future, it is more convenient for them and more convenient for me to know which ones are good for the majority. And so on to the first meal kit service we went. First up on our list was Factor 75. This service is owned by the popular meal service kit HelloFresh. Now, we've all heard it, we all know it, but instead of the ingredients, we get the full meals ready to go in 2 minutes. Factor was first on my list because as a streamer, not only do I get offers as sponsorships for them all the time, I also see a lot of my favorite streamers and YouTubers utilizing sponsorships from them, ranging from podcasts that I listen to regular gamers doing gaming videos. So as a personal trainer and nutrition coach, I have a thing against taking a sponsorship from any company that is related to health and fitness in the sense of meals, supplements, or anything like that I don't personally use on a day-to-day basis and continuously come back to as a consumer. So off to the Factor website I went. The first thing that gave Factor some bonus points when I was doing this research and doing all of these meal kit services is that they give you 50% off your first order, regardless if you have a promo code from one of the other many sponsorships out there. You get one just as a first-time buyer regardless. So you can either get one of those promo codes from one of the streamers or podcast hosts, or you can just log onto the website and get it yourself. Ordering my first box was pretty simple. They have an app, but you can also do it online. And after registering as a new user, all I needed to do was pick my first meals. For the sake of this video, for every company I did, I chose the variation of the calorie conscious or high protein. Things that I would want my clients to focus on is what I ordered from these companies, usually ranging between 400 and 600 calories and between 25 and 45 grams of protein per meal, which is what I give to all my clients as well as focus on myself. So I chose the 8-meal option because that was the most simple, and it gave me a week's worth of food to test out that I could utilize as a stand when it came to ordering a la carte in future meals. And then, like many of the meal kit services out there, you have to pick specific dates that you get your food by, and you have to have your orders in by a certain time. So if you aren't in by that time, you have to wait an extra week or so before you get your box. However, I managed to slip in just in time so that my box arrived right fresh on Monday morning to start off the meals. First up for the week of Factor 75, we have the chicken pot pie pasta. Now, this meal on the website was listed as a high protein and high fiber, which for me as a nutrition coach was two green check marks for me, but also for my clients if I were to have them order this. Now, it's important to note Factor 75 meals rotate every week, so you may not have this as an available option, but if you order long enough, I'm sure it will come up. This meal comes in at 580 calories, 35 grams of protein, and 7 grams of fiber, which for a prepackaged meal is a pretty decent breakdown, especially with that 7 grams of fiber. It was an interesting twist on a classic pot pie, and that was what intrigued me to buy it. Cooking instructions for all of the Factor meals were basically the same. You put a hole in it, you stick it in the microwave, and you cook it from anywhere between 2 and 3 minutes, depending on how it does in your microwave and your microwave levels and so on and so forth. Coming into this, I kind of wanted to make sure that I didn't set expectations too high because at the end of the day, these are basically better for you frozen TV dinners. Although not all of these meals, Factor being one of them, were frozen before they arrived to you, it still had that TV dinner feel. So visually, it was a microwavable meal. Let's be real. If I had the will to make it pretty and do dishes that came with all of that, I would have done that. But no, I stuck the tray in the microwave and that was the extent of it. But diving into the most important part, which is the taste. This meal, of all of the meals I tried, even though it was one of the first ones, was in the middle. I think the concept was an interesting one of turning a chicken pot pie into something a little bit low calorie and a bit more vegetable conscious. However, because it was microwaved, the vegetables were basically just steamed and no seasoning, and it was kind of just bland. And they say the colors in your food helps the taste, and that was true here. It was a very bland looking dish. Therefore, it was also kind of a bland tasting dish. Not a lot of seasoning, but not bad for a frozen-ish meal. Obviously, it wasn't delivered frozen, but not bad for a pre-made meal, I suppose. One of the major pros of this meal was how well hidden the cauliflower pasta was, though. I am one of those people that believes replacing carbs with cauliflower is one of the worst ideas you have ever. There are very few things that can get away with that replacement, and somehow in this one I didn't notice until after I read the label again. So I will give Factor props there. They found a good cauliflower replacement that didn't make my texture issues sing. So on to the next meal we went. Meal number 2 is another classic turned healthy. Ground beef and thyme cottage pie. Now again, I ordered this for the nostalgia factor. If I can find some of my favorites on these meal service kits and have them in lower calorie without having to create those recipes myself, I am a happy camper, and I'm sure a lot of you would be too. This one comes in at 570 calories, 34 grams of protein, and 5 grams of fiber, which is less fiber than the previous meal, but still a pretty good breakdown when you really look at it. So visually, it looked like a cottage pie. It looked like the potatoes and the buttery deliciousness that you would expect. Except for when you go to taste it, this one did not succeed. Factor, as we go through these meals, you will realize, has a habit of replacing the carbs to lower the calories and lower the overall carb intake in their meals with cauliflower substitutes. And that would be okay if you absolutely need to eat low carb, but we shouldn't be afraid of carbs. And replacing mashed potatoes in a cottage pie with a cauliflower mash was one of the biggest sins you could have made with this meal. Especially given that this meal was actually 42 grams of carbs. If you're going to be replacing the potatoes, you better be lowering that carb number. And 42 is just simply too high to be considered a low carb replacement meal. It was all very mushy in texture and kind of missing a little bit of that seasoning that we love from a thyme and cottage pie. After 2 meals of fake carbs, if you will, I started to see that trend that I talked about, and I was a little disappointed because I like real pasta. I like real rice. I like real mashed potatoes. Those are things that I am not afraid of, clearly. And I don't encourage my clients to be afraid of them unless there is a medical need, such as diabetics or things like that, that you would need to be very carb conscious. So that is a little bit of a ding for Factor as we keep going through here, because I need to see what they can do with an actual carb. Now, meal 3. This is probably one of the best dishes I had across this entire journey. It is the filet mignon, or the filet, if you will. And this one comes in at 600 calories, 40 grams of protein, and 7 grams of fiber. So the same amount of fiber, a little bit more calories, and a few more grams of protein created a fantastic dish in comparison to what we got in the previous two with the fake carbs. Because one of the things they did with this is they paired it with a delicious buttery potato on top of putting a nice truffle butter on top. I was a little apprehensive when it came to microwaving a filet. That seems like a sin. Fillets are typically something that you go to a fancy dinner and eat, not something you eat on your couch in front of your TV. But I was left pleasantly surprised. This filet not only has an amazing macro and fiber breakdown, it tasted amazing and was really well cooked, even after nuking it in a microwave. And that's something that I would typically, if I was reheating a steak, which is rare, I would use my air fryer or something to avoid changing the temperature of that steak too often. This filet was a perfect medium rare, nice and tender, and honestly surprising for a pre-cooked meal that was microwaved for 2 minutes. This is one of the best ones I had across all 4 meal services, and will get a 10 out of 10 for me on both the macros and the taste. Meal number 4. Now this is one I wanted to love because I have struggled over the years to find a good replacement for mac and cheese. And this is something I tried to order from every individual meal service kit to see how they stood up against each other and how, from a macros and protein perspective, they adjusted the recipes to create that traditional homey, cheesy, gooey mac and cheese with health conscious perspectives, because I've never been able to do it. And when I go for mac and cheese, I just assume my macros are not going to be great for the day. So the next meal we had was the turkey mac. I ordered this because of my obsession with mac and cheese and nothing else. This one comes in at 530 calories, 32 grams of protein, and 6 grams of fiber. While 32 grams of protein is not high in the sense of one meal, especially if you're looking at 100 to 200 grams of protein per day, it is high for a mostly pasta dish. I was kind of impressed with ways that they were able to incorporate protein elements into it to even get to 32 grams of protein. However, the carbs in this case were still higher, but the calories were lower, so I will give or take with the macros on this one. However, it would have worked out better if this meal was actually cheesy and felt like mac and cheese. This to me felt like when you have butter noodles, where you don't actually melt a cheese sauce and put it in the mac and cheese. Maybe it was never intended to be a mac and cheese, and I just misread the name as turkey mac and assumed mac and cheese. But there was no real cheesy element to this mac. The pasta was okay, but it really just felt like pasta with maybe a little Parmesan drizzled on top. It wasn't gooey. It wasn't really mac and cheese to me. However, the turkey in this tasted pretty good. It was just lacking that cheesy feeling that I love so much. And for more carbs than protein, I would take the steak over the mac and cheese any day with the real potatoes. So that's really it on meal number 4. Would I get the turkey mac again? Probably not, because along the way I found some other options that were better. So we're moving on to meal 5. Meal 5 was, again, another pasta dish. It was the cavatappi, an Italian-style pork ragu. It was another classic that I love. I love any sort of pasta, especially Italian red sauce and pork and a good hearty dinner meal. And again, when I'm trying to be somewhat carb conscious, one of the things I struggle to be able to fit into my macros is, in fact, that pasta. And like I've said, I don't do well with the cauliflower replacements, and I've even tried some of the protein pastas, and they're just not good, in my opinion. This one comes in at 540 calories, 25 grams of protein, and 9 grams of fiber. That fiber number was a big green flag for me. However, with only 25 grams of protein, if we are looking at the pasta dishes, the turkey mac would be the better option because at least you have that extra 10 grams of protein versus this one. However, if we're looking at taste, this Italian-style pork ragu was significantly better than the Southwest turkey mac. However, one thing I did notice along the way, specifically with Factor, is that unlike some of the other meal service kits we'll look at in this video, Factor always has a vegetable side. Even with their pasta dishes that you order, you always get something on the side, even if they're not super well seasoned or maybe just basic steamed broccoli. You at least get that green on the side with your pasta and your protein. And that was one of the benefits I noticed with Factor, and this meal was no different. So they did, unfortunately, change this pasta to a cauliflower pasta. Again, the smell of this dish gave me such high hopes. But similar to the turkey mac, swapping regular pasta for cauliflower pasta and still seeing a high 46 grams of carbs was just simply not worth it for me. I would rather take less real pasta than more cauliflower pasta that doesn't kick that want for a pasta hearty dish. All in all, this one was kind of a bust. Taste-wise, it was great, but macro-wise, not so much. So on to meal 6 we went. Meal 6 was the worst meal across all 4 meal services I had the entire time. And I genuinely didn't think that one of the first meals I had would remain the seeded worst meal across all of them. So if you see this and you go to Factor 75, don't order this one. It was the loaded bacon and spinach shredded chicken. Now, most people wouldn't order that because they just don't like spinach or they don't like pork or whatever. But that was just not the case. I like all of these ingredients separately, but when put together, it was not good. On the website, it is described as a keto-friendly food, and I suppose if you must eat keto, this could be good, but to me, it was one of the last meals I ate, so it didn't hold up as a full week long of meals. It was starting to kind of wilt, and it was starting to kind of get gross before I even cooked it, but it wasn't bad yet. And that's where it started. So this meal comes in at 690 calories, which was high in comparison to a lot of the other dishes I ordered, but also high for what I was trying to aim for during this meal, but it sounded so good that I had to order it. It was 41 grams of protein. This was another reason I ordered because it was very high on the protein range to accept that 690 calories. But it was only 4 grams of fiber, and I don't love that here. Especially where when I was ordering through Factor, I was trying to focus on low calorie, high protein, and look at the fiber numbers to see what we could do. This was one of the only services that the fiber numbers were openly available when I was ordering, so it was an added bonus for me. However, this was just not good. Nothing about this dish came together. It was a lot of mush and didn't retain any sort of texture when microwaved, and honestly, I don't have a good thing to say about it. I guess if you like those kind of fat bombs, it was very ranch and not cheese, but I don't know how to explain it other than it was just not good. There was no extra texture. It was just, yeah, nope. I can't even describe it here. It was just not good. So I'm going to go on and say that was the worst meal I had across all 4 of these, and do not order it. But that doesn't mean you shouldn't maybe order Factor 75 every now and again. But moving on to the last meal I had. Now, if you're counting with me, you will know I said 8 at the beginning, and I'm ending on 7 here. That is because I share my home with my husband, and he ate one of them. He gave me very minimal reviews to each one that he ate in every category, but we're not going to focus on those because he didn't complain too much about them, so they must not have been that bad. But going on to the last meal of Factor 75, which was meal number 7, the potato leek and grilled chicken. This was again another one with real potatoes in it. And this potato leek and grilled chicken comes in at 530 calories, 41 grams of protein, and 5 grams of fiber. Now, those are some numbers I'd like to see. Relatively low on the calorie front, really high on the protein front, and kind of mid-level from the meals I ordered at Factor on the fiber front. It had real potatoes. It was nice and juicy chicken, even after being microwaved, which is a really hard thing to do. I will give all of these meal services credit where credit is due. They have created such a unique cooking perspective that they don't do the classic, I put it in a microwave and now I have extremely dry chicken. And that was important to me, is it has to taste good if I'm going to be spending money on these things. And for the most part, they all had at least 1 or 2 meals that tasted good. But visually, again, it's a microwave meal. If we're looking at visuals, this was a very beige, kind of whatever, not a lot of color, but you've got your side veggie that comes with the creamy, smooth potatoes and a really well-seasoned chicken. So overall, if I were to order from Factor again, the 2 biggest ones I would go back in for would be the filet and the potato and leek grilled chicken. You can order multiple of the same one, and that's what I would do here, unless I would try a few of the other ones as the meals rotate. Some of them are staples, like the potato and leek, or the potato leek and chicken. That is one that you can get continuously. The turkey mac is one you can get continuously, or at least in my experience, that was true because I checked on the meals a couple weeks later. However, finding those protein with a carb and veggie type builds, I think, is the best opportunity with Factor 75. All in all, Factor 75 is the first meal kit service I had ever, or meal delivery service I had ever experienced. Was a good one. I had heard many people complain about the issues they had had with HelloFresh, and back in my meal kit service days, I never actually tried them because of that. So I was a little worried coming into Factor 75 that Factor would be like HelloFresh, its parent company, and have so many orders. Now, I only ordered 1 week, but the bonus of the 50% off made ordering that 1 week basically kind of a tester. I didn't have to worry if it was absolutely horrible because the price tag wasn't too high. And that creates a good relationship with your new consumers, that you basically get to test these boxes and then cancel them. But however, one of the downsides to Factor 75 for me, who always forgets about my subscriptions, is having a subscription-based service. I ended up with a second box of Factor 75 throughout this series because I forgot to cancel it and I forgot to skip weeks in the case that I went back to Factor 75 at the end of this. And that led me to having the meal kit that I was currently working with in my fridge, plus the Factor 75 meals, and it was just a lot. And so if you don't like subscription services, that could be a downside to Factor 75 for you, because then you have to remember to cancel it. However, canceling was a very simple process. where I just went into the app, I pressed the button, and it was done, which is not something I could say for one of the future meal kit services that I also had to cancel by the end of this. But the question still stands. Who will be the winning service kit? Because that was just one, and we've got 3 more to go. Next up on our meal kit service is a smaller company known as Hummus Fit. Now, I discovered this through people in the bodybuilding space and a lot of other fitness influencers that I follow that are similar in their content style and their fitness style as I am as a coach. And I trust them as fitness influencers to recommend products, generally because they have never steered me wrong. This company came to my site, at least, via one of their popular products called Buffin Muffins. These are basically marketed as a muffin that is high protein and delicious. One of the fitness product reviewers that I watch, former Fat Guy Fitness, has reviewed their muffins and said that certain flavors of the Buffin Muffins are some of the best protein products he's ever had. And that guy, well, he eats a lot of protein products, so at this point I kind of trust his opinion. Now, them being a smaller company did have one downside in comparison to Factor 75. Due to their limitation on where they are located versus where they can ship in the United States, and getting food to your doorstep that is still fresh and not in bad states, there are certain locations throughout the United States that have to pay a $30 ground shipping fee to get you your food within the 2-day time limit in order to not have spoiled bad food get lost in the shipping system. Not necessarily Hummus Fit's fault. However, due to them not having locations all around the country that make it easy for food to show up on your doorstep within a reasonable amount of time, that meant the consumer, or myself, had to then absorb that $30 fee on top of my order. The other interesting difference between Hummus and Factor from the point of ordering is Hummus Fit is a la carte style meal kit service. So they have meals that you can pick out individually. They also have more bodybuilding style meal prep type kits that you can order meat and vegetables and sides by the pound. But they don't have a subscription style where you order a certain amount of meals every week. Your closest thing to a discount on the meals is being able to order 10 meals for $110 plus your $30 shipping fee. So I ordered them all a la carte rather than doing a kit to order the same amount that I ordered with Factor 75. I ordered 8 meals and a Buffin Muffin just to see the difference in cost. While I did use a discount code from one of the influencers that I do follow that brought me to look at this company, my total at the end of the day for those, I will correct myself here, 7 meals and 1 Buffin Muffin was $30 shipping, and it came out to $105 for the 7 meals, the muffin, and the shipping all in total after my discount from the creator that I found them through. As a first-time buyer, $105 seems a little steep for meals that I may not like. However, given that I trusted the influencers that I was getting the promo codes from and found this company from, I thought it would be an okay assumption that I, as someone who works in a similar space, would enjoy the food as I typically do most of the other services and supplements that these people recommend. However, I can recognize that people who aren't used to the meal prep style food can find some of this food as off-putting or microwaved food not so great. However, in that case, if that is true for you, you might not be looking at meal kit services in the first place. That, however, does put a little extra leg up for Factor 75, however, because the 50% off on your first time order to alleviate some of the hit that comes with ordering a meal kit service for the first time is a super helpful thing to ease my mind as a consumer that if I don't like it, I'm not wasting $100+ on food when I could have just gone to the grocery store. Yes, these are made for convenience. However, that first time buyer remorse and easing my mind there was something that I appreciated with Factor that I would love to see other companies do. But with a smaller company, you can't always afford to do that, and I understand. But on to the meals. Meal number one was a meal I was hoping would just be absolutely fantastic because I could probably eat a mountain of the real life stuff without ever thinking about it twice. It was the Fit Filet meal, intended to be a healthier version, if you will, of the Chick-fil-A Mountain Man style meals that people have created with the fries and the cheese and the bacon and the chicken nuggies and the Chick-fil-A sauce, or sauce in general. I was hoping so much for this meal. I was hoping that maybe they had recreated a Chick-fil-A style sauce that is not as calorie dense. I was hoping that the waffle fries would be delicious and seasoned, because they did say seasoned fries in the description of this. However, I was a little bit let down. Coming in at 490 calories, 41 grams of protein, and 30 grams of fiber, this meal from a macro perspective is immaculate, as it should be, coming from a company that is meant for bodybuilders. However, on a taste perspective, I think one of the downsides of this was the microwave itself. As I talked about in the Factor 75 reviews, one of the things I was worried about with the chicken and the filet was that when you put it through a microwave, the microwave would do what the microwave did best and nuke it. And for anyone who has ever tried to reheat French fries after going out to a restaurant, we all know they don't go well together. Visually and smell-wise, this meal was having me drooling. But when I went to eat it, the microwave unfortunately took out the fries and took out the chicken to the point that it was almost inedible. The sauce was tasty, the seasoning was tasty, but I think if I were to order this meal again, I would give it one more shot in an air fryer rather than in a microwave, because with the current microwave instructions, the meal just crumbled under the microwave, as French fries tend to do. However, for such amazing macros, I would be willing to give this one another shot, purely to go with a different set of cooking instructions and see if that changes how this meal tastes and the texture feels in your mouth afterwards. So, not a great start for Hummus Fit, but may not entirely be the food's fault. So, on to meal number 2 we go. Unfortunately, with meal number 2, our luck did not come upwards. Second only to the loaded bacon chicken from Factor 75, the Crying Tiger steak bowl from Hummus Fit was quite honestly one of the worst meals I think I've ever had. The steak was well cooked, but other than that, there was no seasoning. And it was an $11 meal for worse macros than the Fit Filet bowl. Having the a la carte option on this one brought an interesting perspective into my head. If the meal is not good in Factor 75, you paid a total price for all 8 meals. Whereas if the meal is not good with Hummus Fit or one of the other options that we tried in this series, you are seeing that dollar sign stick out to you of, I just spent $11 on this plus the shipping fee for it to taste like ass. And for me, this one was less about the taste and more about the texture. There was a heavy onion flavor to this one, which I was not expecting. But when I think Crying Tiger, I think Asian influence with maybe some soy or maybe some spicy chili. But what we got here was mushy rice, onions, and steak. And I wish there was just some other level of seasoning to this and maybe some crunchy element that made this taste better. Now, don't get me wrong, the steak was fantastic, and again, impressive given that it was a microwave meal, but the texture here is what got the worst of me. And unfortunately, Hummus Fit is now 0 for 2 in their week of meals, and I really wanted to like this service. I just cannot get behind the meals that I've ordered thus far. However, like I said, the first one could have been a cooking instruction problem. I would be willing to try that one again. This one just had no redeeming qualities. So on to meal 3 we go. Meal number 3, the one I tried to order from every service, barbecue mac and cheese, or some variation of mac and cheese. This one was barbecue, so similar in style to the previous one, which was Southwestern turkey mac. This is barbecue mac and cheese, which two things that go together really well, barbecue and mac and cheese. And this is where Hummus Fit redeemed themselves just a little bit. So this meal comes in at 510 calories, a whopping 52 grams of protein, and a surprisingly low number of 52 grams of carbs. So it's even protein, even carbs, but given that it is a mac and cheese with real noodles, not cauliflower noodles, an obscene amount of protein, and a relatively low calorie count, this is the mac and cheese I was looking for when I was thinking, I want a health-conscious version of mac and cheese. This did not disappoint. It was gooey, it was barbecue-y, and it put that Factor mac and cheese to shame. And in some cases, it put some regular mac and cheeses to shame. It was delicious and juicy, and I just have not a bad word to say about a full dinner mac and cheese that only had 510 calories with 52 grams of protein. The only thing I would suggest here is maybe adding some vegetable on the side. That was something I noticed with Hummus Fit and a few of the others, is it is a condensed meal, and I feel like to get a full rounded meal here, an individual who were ordering these meals would probably have to add something on the side, like a salad or a steamed broccoli or some other green, because as much as I would love to eat nothing but pasta for dinner, that's not the best meal when you are trying to be on a fitness journey of some variety. You want to make sure you have some greens and you have some other stuff in there. So other than that, I really have not a bad thing to say about this barbecue mac and cheese. I would 100% order it again. However, it still doesn't beat the steak. So on to meal 4 we go, but Hummus Fit is starting to redeem itself. On to meal 4, which was the caramel cheesesteak bowl. And again, this had a similar, there was a theme that happened in some of these boxes, and there were these oniony, just weird large onion cuts that drove me nuts. I don't know what it is, but in both Hummus Fit and in future trifecta boxes, there were these giant onions that I just could not stand. And that unfortunately impacted my ability to evaluate these meals, because the weird texture of these stringy onions and how they were kind of slimy just rubbed me the wrong way as a person that really struggles with texture. However, on a macro perspective, the caramel cheesesteak bowl came in at 460 calories, 40 grams of protein, and a surprisingly large 17 grams of fat, which was odd given that it was mostly just steak and rice in this world, and maybe some cheese or something that created the 17 grams of fat. However, if I'm going to be looking at how I would play with my limited fat macro and limited carb macro, I would much rather do something like make a protein ice cream, or maybe even transition my alcohol into my fat macro and have an adult beverage. So when it comes to this meal in Hummus Fit, it unfortunately didn't stay on the high that came from the mac and cheese. The steak, again, was amazingly well cooked, but the rice felt undercooked when I was eating it, and the texture all around was just kind of slimy and not the best. So moving on to meal 5. Next up was the Beyond tacos. Now, if there were vegetarian or vegan options available using Beyond Meat or other styles of non-animal product meats, I did try to order it to see how these meals compare into the full-fledged version, especially given that for vegetarians and vegans in the weight loss space or bodybuilding space, or really just the fitness space in general, it is more difficult for them to get the protein they need. Even for me, who can't really do dairy, it's super hard, even with supplements, to really get non-dairy supplements that have just as much protein as, say, a whey isolate. So I tried to order it for my vegetarian vegan friends to see how it tasted and see how it compared against some of the other options available for those of us that are not vegan and vegetarian. And this one was surprisingly tasty. The only real issue I had with this is all of the sauces and other things that came with it. It was all built up in the taco rather than in separate compartments. So by the end of the week, when I had this meal, it got very mushy, and reheating really didn't help. Therefore, the texture issues were really hard to get past to really taste all of the amazing flavors that were coming together in this taco. One suggestion I would have for this is, if I were making it, I would put everything in a separate and let it be a build your own taco, because that would make this so much better, in my opinion. So this one comes in at 360 calories, an impressive 32 grams of protein, and 38 grams of carbs, which for a vegan dish is pretty decent. Low calorie, higher protein, and pretty impressive given that it's tacos. It was 2 smaller tacos, so I again would probably have to add a side to this to really make it a full, well-balanced dinner and not feel hungry the next morning, especially if I was eating that as my big dinner like I typically do and hadn't had a lot throughout the day. It was a really messy taco, but it was tasty. And like I said, the only real complaint I had about these vegan tacos was the squishiness based on being in my fridge for about a week by the time I ate it, and it being all built up and all the juices leaking into the tortillas. Again, an air fry might have helped here because it would harden up the tortillas a little bit, but I'm not sure even an air fryer would have changed and saved the texture of this dish. However, the taste was amazing, so Hummus Fit is starting to balance itself back out in this journey. But on to meal 6 we go. Now, meal 6 was for all of my breakfast-loving fiends out there. Most of these meal kit services have other add-ons you can add, like breakfast or supplements, or Factor even had health shots and things like that. But for the interest of this video, I tried to stick to meals you could order rather than all of the extras. Meal 6 was for my breakfast lovers. It was the strawberry protein French toast. I know I love the non-savory life of breakfast. That is about the only breakfast I will eat. And therefore, going after protein waffles, protein French toast, protein pancakes, those types of things to get that quick hit of protein in the morning and not have to pound protein at the end of the day is always beneficial for me and many others that I've worked with as clients. So I went for the French toast. And this was the last meal I ate. Had it been one of the first, I think it would have been a little bit different. However, I have to go with what was presented in front of me. They are supposed to last a week and be good for at least a week. So one would assume that your textures wouldn't change too much. However, I think this was another victim of the microwave. You can't microwave bread. If we put it in an air fryer or even in the oven itself, I think this would have been a much better off dish. However, it tasted delicious even knowing the bread was gonna be a little rubbery. Coming in at 350 calories, 25 grams of protein, and 45 grams of carbs for a dish that was pretty much straight up bread, that's a pretty good macro spread. And I would have loved that the bread wasn't so rubbery. However, the syrup, the sugar-free syrup it comes with, and the strawberry butter cream cheese compote it comes on the side with was amazing. I think with some fruit, fresh fruit added in with it, and maybe a couple extra pieces of protein in the form of bacon or maybe a biscuits and gravy or something, you could really round this out as a tasty protein French toast breakfast snack. It's not really a full meal, especially at 350 calories, but it is a lighter breakfast that has a pretty good protein packed punch, and it tasted delicious, even knowing the rubbery bread was going to happen. So I can't really blame Hummus Fit for this one. I think with some different cooking instructions, we could change some of the textures and better some of these meals because the taste is definitely there. But at the end of the day, I really wanted to love Hummus Fit because it's so easy to order. They're macro focused, right? A lot of the companies can say that they're healthy and say that they're meant to help people on their journeys, but they'll be very heavy on the fat side or not really well balanced macros. And you want to be able to help smaller businesses as well. But the price tag was just too high for me to say I would recommend this to my clients. One, two, I would be willing to take a sponsorship if that opportunity ever arises. And three, if I tried some of these meals again, I don't know how much the cooking instruction changes would change the texture issues I found with trying to reheat these meals. I think if we're eating them as they were coming off the cook line, they would be fantastic dishes. But the issue of sitting in a fridge and putting in a reheating environment changed a lot of the texture and seasoning and taste of these meals. And for me, texture is a big, big issue. It can taste amazing, but if the texture is off, I won't be able to eat it. So for anyone out there who has texture issues, I didn't have as many issues with Factor 75 having bad textures as I did with hummus. So that would be a consideration when it comes to meal kit services. Even with meal prepping, right? You want to meal prep things that are going to reheat well. And in this case, I don't think a lot of these meals do. So that's something to think about. But the other question everyone has with Hummus Fit is, are the Buffin muffins worth it? And truthfully, after eating my double chocolate brownie Buffin muffin, and I even heated it up a little bit in the air fryer so it was a little bit extra gooey, absolutely. However, with a $30 shipping charge, I am not going to order from Hummus Fit just to get Buffin muffins. But if I wanted to try a few of their other meals again in the future, I absolutely would order a lot of those Buffin muffins. But on to the next meal service kit we go. Up on this adventure was Trifecta. Now, this one differs from the other two in the sense that I had never heard of them before. I knew there were a bunch of different meal kit services out there, and I wanted to go with ones that were popularized, and then I wanted to get a little bit more niche and see what ones I could find that had nothing to do with popular sponsorships and see if their prices compared based on how big they were. Now, off to Google I went, and that's where I found Trifecta. So similar to Factor 75, when I went on Trifecta's website, I saw that they had a subscription-based service for meal kits. However, they also had an a la carte style service with the meal by the pound, similar to Hummus Fit. But in order to compare as similar as possible, I ordered the 7 meal box from Trifecta under their subscription service. Another subscription I wasn't super happy about because I would have to remember to cancel it, which I'm not, or skip weeks, which I'm also not great about. However, similar to both Hummus Fit and Factor, Trifecta had a bunch of different categories of meals ranging from high protein to weight loss to keto to vegetarian, and you could pick all of your meals from the different things. They also have a rotating menu, but from what I've seen on their website since ordering originally, The menu doesn't rotate as often as Factors does. So if you like being able to order the same thing every week, that is a bonus to Trifecta over Factor 75 if we're going with the meal kit service with subscription option versus a la carte having to order all the time variation. So looking at this one, there is a lot more offered in the sense of meals and variety than there was with Factor 75. You were limited to a set list with Factor versus this one where you have your whole big wide menu that you can order your 7 meal kits from. But again, similar to Factor, you had to have your meals in by a certain date to have it arrive by a certain date, and they ship and process orders all at the same time. And the one major downside here is it was 7 meals instead of 8, so I didn't have that bonus meal for my husband to be able to eat along the way. But on to the first meal we go. First one for me was a little bit iffy to order. I sometimes am very cautious about ordering even the meal kit services with seafood in it. It was a sweet chili shrimp. I love sweet chili dishes, chicken, steak, shrimp even. Shrimp is one of the only seafood I do like to eat, and I'd like to throw it in, especially when I need a little bit more protein, a little less fat, because I am a red meat and chicken girly at heart. However, if I need to lower my fat for the day, shrimp is usually my go-to. So I ordered the first meal kit or meal service delivery shrimp dish, and I was a little iffy on it. Partially because similar to steak and chicken, shrimp tends to get rubbery when you reheat it in the microwave, and it doesn't always do great. But I was absolutely impressed by this dish because the shrimp was not rubbery and very tasty. Coming in at 410 calories, 30 grams of protein, and 49 grams of carbs, this dish has a little less protein than I would ideally want in a meal, but it's shrimp, so you kind of have to expect that. You're gonna get less protein from eating something like shrimp versus chicken or steak or even pork. However, the carbs being as high as they are with the protein being as low as it is, while this was a very tasty dish, I don't know that I could reorder it continuously and still be able to hit macros, or recommend that my clients reorder this one if they did like shrimp, just because you'd have to be very strategic about how you handled your macros throughout the day with a high carb count at 49 grams for 410 calories. You might get a little bit of an imbalance there, but the dish was amazing. So I can't say I wouldn't order it again. I would just have to be very strategic about where my macros were throughout the day in order to have this one, due to the high carb count and the lower protein count. However, it is thus far already on a better foot than Hummus Fit was when we first started off there. So on to the next one. Meal number 2. Every pack has an offensive dish, I am convinced. And this was Trifecta's offensive dish. When I first pulled this meal out of the box and put it in my fridge, my husband said it looked like vomit, and I don't disagree with him. The apple Dijon chicken is hard to make look appetizing when it is vacuum sealed into a little container, and the colors of Dijon just aren't pleasant. But I had hopes that it might taste more pleasant than it looks, and unfortunately, that was not the case. The chicken was very juicy, and I will give perks where perks are due. The rest of the dish was just very bland with no real flavoring. I didn't get a lot of the Dijon, even though there was a lot of sauce. I didn't get a lot of the apple, which I love, the spicy mustard with the apple sweetness usually, and I did not get that. I also noticed a trend with Trifecta as I was eating more and more of these meals as my main dinner every night, that I was going to bed feeling hungry. These dishes were light on the carb from a starchy carb perspective. There was not a lot of satiating feeling. Obviously with the shrimp, it's not going to be as satiating as, say, a piece of steak. But in this case, it was chicken, and I should have felt full. at the end of the dish, and I did not going to bed for the second night in a row with a trifecta dish. So the portion sizes are obviously smaller, which means they're heavier on the calories than the other dishes were for similar sizes. And that is unfortunate because I just wanted to have a dinner solution when I was ordering these meal kits. And if I'm feeling hungry when I'm going to bed, not even just in the morning, that is clearly not an option here because I don't want to be snacking throughout the night because my dinner wasn't satiable enough. And unfortunately, that trend continued with the rest of the trifecta meals. However, this one just had no saving grace. But on to meal 3 we went. Meal 3. This meal kit service version of the mac and cheese I tried to order for every dish. It was the buffalo pasta. And unfortunately, this was another one of those dishes with the annoying onion cuts that I just could not escape. I don't know what chef thinks it is a good idea to put large, stringy onion cuts into things, specifically things with buffalo in them, but I just could not get around the obnoxiously large veggie cuts in this dish because this time around it wasn't just the onions. On top of that, all of the large vegetable cuts made the dish kind of mushy as the vegetables started to melt as they do in a microwave, and there was no real texture variation in this dish. Coming in at 490 calories, 42 grams of protein, the buffalo pasta had a surprising amount of protein for it being a pasta dish, and it was definitely better than the apple Dijon thing I had the night before, but it was lacking the actual buffalo flavor, and similar to the hummus fit dishes, I feel these carb-heavy dinners really need to be paired with a green or something a little bit lighter that will allow you to get some fiber in, as well as something other than strictly carbs to maybe help that satiability of these dishes that I was lacking. But that is it for the buffalo pasta, and on to night 4 we went. Moving on to night 4 of trifecta is when I noticed that none of these dishes were going to be completely offensive other than the one that seems to happen in every meal kit I ordered, but trifecta didn't really have any standouts either. I was still holding out hope for a standout, but the next one was the teriyaki chicken, which is a dish I adore in every variety. I've had health choice frozen variations of teriyaki chicken. I've had proper teriyaki chicken in other places. I don't know what proper teriyaki chicken is, but I've had it at restaurants. I've had it cooked at home. I've had it in frozen meal varieties. I've had it in like the packets that you can put on your own chicken that you're cooking. And I have yet to find a variation of teriyaki chicken I did not love. Even though this was one of the most flavorful dishes from trifecta, again, I was lacking in the satiability. It was a very light dish. And even though they used a real starchy carb this time, the serving size on the carb was a lot lighter than some of the other dishes from the other meal service kits. So I was left feeling hungry. And on top of that, this dish had the annoying onions that I will forever be haunted by. It tainted the whole dish, even though the flavors were awesome. I could not get past the texture of it and the kind of lackluster, empty feeling I felt after with how light the dish was. So again, it may not be suited for a solid dinner. However, it has the calories of a solid dinner, so using it as a lunch dish to go a little lighter is probably not really an option either when it comes to balancing out macros calories throughout the day. And that's where I struggled a little bit with this one. But still holding out hope, let's move on to meal 5. Meal number 5 was the sesame pork, and this one actually was a surprising little gem in this pack of bland nothingness. And after 2 dishes of onions, honestly, I was just extremely happy not to deal with stringy onions of nonsense. And coming in at 420 calories, 29 grams of protein, and 20 grams of fat, for a pork dish, this is a really well balanced dish when it comes to the macros and everything that came with it. However, there was some microwave issues when it comes to all of the vegetables and potatoes and everything being mixed together in one container, that when you microwaved it in the steam environment that is created to be able to reheat these foods, the textures started to blend together and you lost some of the crunch from the vegetables, and some of the potatoes started to turn watery, and that's just not really great. I'm assuming a large majority of the fat came from the potatoes and any dairy that might have been used in that, as well as the pork cut itself. However, with how low the protein is in this dish, I would much rather take a look at a different dish that had a higher protein count with maybe a little bit more fat, in order to feel more satiable, also, as well as have a stronger protein background for 420 calories. But as in comparison to the rest of the meals in this box, the sesame pork was one of the winners, and I would order that one again, I believe. But on to meal 6 we go. Meal 6 could have been a little bit my fault, could have been mostly the dish itself and the cooking instructions. Meal 6 was the red tamales, and the cooking instructions in a microwave were not the best opportunity. And while I will say trifecta gave you options for using an air fryer or using an oven over the microwave, I tried to keep things as consistent as possible across this experiment, so all of my meals went into the microwave except one, and that is because the only cooking instructions on the one dish, and we will get there soon, was an air fryer. So I used the air fryer for that because it only came with air fryer instructions. However, if a microwave instruction was available, that is what I used, and I think that made this dish suffer a lot. But also, it being one of the last dishes I used and on the edge of how long they are supposed to be good in a fridge, that also definitely impacted the taste and texture of this dish. However, it was just, after so much bad in this kit, I could not justify really saying this was good. It was one of the better ones for sure, but texturally it had almost no texture. Seasoning was great, but it was very mushy and very bland in some cases, but in some cases it was really well seasoned. But the macros on this also weren't great, so I don't know that I would ever order the tamales again. However, in the interest of giving trifecta a second chance, I would order them and put them in an air fryer, similar to the fit filet situation with the hummus fit meals. If I'm going to give one meal kit service a second chance by using an air fryer, I should be willing to give another one. However, given that this is a subscription based and I can't pick the meals as I choose and when I choose, it would be more difficult for me to go back in to Trifecta and order a box again, knowing that a majority of these meals were bad. And to wrap it all up with Trifecta, this one was just bad. And I think there's a reason 75 Hard and Hummus Fit and the other influencer-based programs that you see out there all of the time are out there for a reason. Because yes, we all get tired of the undisclosed ads or secrets of trying to sell products that you don't know that they have a promo code with. And that's not true for all influencers, but I know I get tired of it just as well as you guys. So I don't want to say, go out and buy these things because I want a promo code with them. That's not the case here. I have 0 promo codes with any of these companies, and I ordered this all on my own dime. But Trifecta is not one I would recommend to anyone. It was very inconsistent with their foods, their flavorings, their textures. Things didn't really go into microwave well. I think a large majority of them would have benefited from the other cooking instructions. And on top of that, canceling the service was a royal pain in the ass. Not only do they not have an app that you could easily skip meals and subscriptions and things like that with, they also require you to contact an individual human being that will ask you a lot of questions and try to get you to come back repetitively throughout the cancellation process to be able to cancel your subscription. And that to me was more annoying than anything else. I am the type of person that if I want to try something and it happens to have a subscription, I want to be able to press a button and end it and call it a day. If I hated it, I don't want to have to answer questions. I understand they're doing it for quality control, but I don't want to be inconvenienced from a service, and I'm sure you don't either. So that was one major issue I had with Trifecta on top of the many food issues. But as a user and consumer, making your process easy to not only order as well as cancel is super important. To me, I wanted to like it because it's backed by a lot of people. There was coaching, there was chefs, like professional chefs and professional nutritionists involved in creating this company, but they are not on the right track when it comes to delivering meals that are good and sustainable for someone who's going to eat a week of meals at a time. And again, similar to Hummus Fit, I wanted to love it, but I just didn't. I would not order this one again, whereas Hummus Fit, I would give a chance to some of their other meals because it's possible I just ordered bad ones for me. But on to the last meal kit service of the list. The last meal kit in this grouping of meal kit services that I tried to try and help you guys come up with what is the best solution for you if you are looking at meal kit services was actually a local one. Now, while you may not be local to me and this option may not be available to you, the idea here was maybe you can go find a local meal kit service that is maybe trying to sell out of your local gym, because that's how I found these guys. When I was going to the LA Fitness or Esporta Fitness in my area, I found these guys selling at the little supplement store that LA Fitness has inside their gyms. I would go get my shake every day and see these delicious looking tacos or these bowls or the pounds of chicken or things like that that they were selling out of my gym, and that sparked my interest in this company. And I love supporting local, I love supporting small businesses, so I wanted to be able to include them in this service and hopefully give them a good review, because I never once, the entire time I was going to that gym, actually bought a meal from them, because I have meals at home. I have food at home. I don't need to buy this from the gym. I'm going to have my shake and then I'm going to walk out because I'm not going to go home right now anyways. So having food in my car, blah, blah, blah. That story really doesn't matter. But the idea here is if you're looking at meal kit services and you have a local one available to you, which so many of these things are popping up over time, you should look at your local ones because you're probably going to get the best food options and the most variety and flexibility from someone who is local to you, either being able to get it delivered or just walk into their shop and buy it for you. So the last meal kit service on this list is Beast Coast Nutrition. Local to me here, they are a Florida-run business similar to Hummus Fit, where they are a smaller business focused on health and fitness. They really are focused on the bodybuilding and gym, everyday gym goer type life. And I love where they're coming from and the fact that they have a wide variety of options when it comes to meals, as well as getting meal kit type stuff with pounds of meat. And they're even starting to branch into desserts and breakfast and things like that. That makes them a well-rounded company that was easy to access and didn't have a $30 shipping fee for me. While you cannot get these meals outside of the state of Florida, I don't believe at the moment, finding your local company to be able to do something like this with would absolutely be the beneficial way of doing it in my opinion. However, there was one interesting thing about this company being a local company that changed my experience in comparison to the other groups. When the other groups had their food shipped to my door, it came in a dry ice style box where everything was almost nearly frozen. When I pulled it out of the box and stuck it in my fridge, it got to a point where it was okay to be in the fridge. But if I wasn't home when the food was delivered, then it would be okay sitting on my porch for a little while. However, because I had it delivered to see what delivery was like with this company, I was awoken at 6 a.m. by my Ring doorbell telling me my food had been delivered at 6 a.m. on a Saturday. That was not something I was expecting when I picked my delivery date. And I was also not expecting it to be delivered in a DoorDash style fashion where all of my meals were together in a plastic bag on my front porch. And while it was convenient I was home, that is something to know that if you are local to Beast Coast, or even with some of your local ones, they'll probably doing something similar. Make sure you're home when you choose your delivery date, because having food out on your front porch for several hours could mean you lose all that food you just ordered. From a price perspective, they were pretty similar to the rest of the kits. $100 for 7 to 8 meals was about the normal without any major discounts. So moving on to the actual food, into day one we go. So the first meal we had from Beast Coast was a honey garlic chicken. And one of the first things I noticed when I received these meals into my house was that a lot of the meals were packaged in separate little containers. So if I got tacos, the lettuce and the tomatoes were in their own little containers and the sauce was off to the side that you can pull out of your containers before you heat them up and then put them on the tacos, which I really like because that stops some of the texture issues I had with some of the previous meals where everything kind of just congealed together before you even cooked it. And so that was an immediate perk for this particular meal kit service with the way they package their food, because I don't have to deal with texture issues as long as I don't let the food go bad. So there was a container for this that had the little sauce in it that I pulled out before I put the food in the microwave, and I microwaved my chicken. This honey garlic chicken comes in at 305 calories, 30 grams of protein, and only 5 grams of fat, which was a surprisingly low gram of fat that I was impressed with in comparison to the rest of the meals I had throughout this time. Now, one of the things I also enjoyed about Beast Coast is when you were picking your meals, you could also choose some smaller carb or lower carb options, or substitute things like jasmine for cauliflower rice instead of them choosing that for you. But you can make substitutions to make it macro balanced for your needs, because some people need lower carbs, some people need higher carb, some people don't like to bring their fats to a certain point. And it allows you to adjust for different types of days too. If you know you're going to be carb heavy in the morning because you're going out to brunch with friends, then you can have a lower carb dinner option ready for you at home via all of the substitutions and swaps you can make with this particular meal service kit. Now, into the taste of this dish, I was blown away. And I really wish this wasn't a local company that I could try to be an affiliate with and sell to everybody, because there was not a single dish in this entire list that we will talk about here that tasted bad. And this was the week that I received a second Factor 75 box, as well as going into Thanksgiving. So some of these dishes sat in my fridge, I'm going to be completely honest, a little longer than they were supposed to. They weren't bad by any means, but if we go for freshness level that they tell you, they were definitely in my fridge for more than 7 days, and they were all still amazing. The little honey garlic sauce that they had me pour over all the chicken and rice here was absolutely delicious. It was perfectly sweet, perfectly garlicky, and I don't have a bad thing to say about this dish. Perfectly moist chicken, well-cooked rice, and of course I went with the jasmine rice option because cauliflower rice is a sin against humanity. But it was very well balanced, and I didn't feel, even though it was a lighter dish, I didn't feel hungry at the end of the day. With only 305 calories and 30 grams of protein, this dish packed me full as one of the only dinners not one only dinner as the only dinner I had, and I didn't add anything extra. I was still full the next morning and not really ravenous for a bunch of breakfast food like I was with trifecta. But meal number 1 was an amazing start, and I've already kind of spoiled the secret here. Going on to meal number 2, I had really high hopes. Meal number 2 I ordered purely because it was another one of those classic dish made protein bowl style things. It was a cheeseburger bowl, and again, with the sauces and the weird kind of texture things you can run into here, I was very curious how all of this would reheat and turn into a yummy bowl. Coming in at 487 calories, 30 grams of protein, and 25 grams of fat, this one is a little bit heavier packed, but that's largely due to the 8812 ground beef that was used in this dish, as well as the Big Mac like sauce that was used to make this dish absolutely delicious. However, in a fat conscious environment with macros, 25 grams of fat with only 30 grams of protein might be a little high if we were really concerned about those things. For me, in this case, I was not, so it wasn't a worry, but I would have liked to see a higher protein number. However, the taste of this dish totally made up for its kind of lack of macros, and you would just have to plan strategically to be able to get that amazing cheeseburger taste at the end of the day that maybe you couldn't get if you ran to McDonald's with your kids. However, there was one interesting thing about this dish, that instead of a base of rice or base of potatoes that I'm used to seeing with these cheeseburger bowls, it used a sweet potato swap, and that helps with the calories, and I'm sure it helps also with the carb number when it comes to using sweet potatoes. I just think it was an odd switch. Normally, I'm not a huge sweet potato fan. The texture is usually really off to me, and the taste usually ruins a dish, but I surprisingly didn't notice the sweet potatoes too much until I went back into the description after the fact. So I will give Beast Coast props there for being able to hide that sweet potato taste in this cheeseburger bowl. However, I still think using sweet potatoes in a cheeseburger bowl was an odd choice. Not a bad one, just an odd one. But on to meal 3 we go. Meal 3. Oh my goodness. Meal 3 was a surf and turf. Again, ordering seafood in the form of shrimp was a little nerve-wracking. Had it been sitting in my porch a little longer than it was, we might have had some issues with this one. But I was wide awake and ready for my food to be delivered, so no harm, no foul here. However, this surf and turf dish, quite honestly, was the only thing that beat out the initial filet in the beginning. It is the only dish that even came close to rivaling how good the initial steak was as we progressed past Factor 75. And it did not disappoint at all. The shrimp weren't rubbery. The steak was nice and well cooked. There was a nice, delicious chimichurri sauce, buttery chimichurri on the steak, and a lovely potato to go with it all. And there was even one extra benefit to this dish that Factor and its filet did not have, which was the vegetables that came with this amazing dish were very well seasoned. And that is a common thread amongst all of the Beast Coast nutrition meals that I had, is the seasoning was phenomenal. I could not say a bad thing about the taste of a lot of these dishes. But not only was this dish tasty, the macros on it were phenomenal. At only 360 calories, which I don't know how you did that with a piece of steak, chimichurri butter, potatoes. I would love to see how they managed that one, what swaps they made. But 360 calories and a whopping 40 grams of protein with only 10 grams of fat. This was by far my top choice, and I would order a week of just this dish. But there are so many good options for Beast Coast that I don't know that I could choose to order this more than once because I want so many other things from them. There are so many customizations you can make here. You could choose your starch, you could choose your vegetable, you could choose a different butter topping that wasn't the chimichurri one if you wanted to. And it was the perfect blend of everything I needed in a meal kit service. Plus, there was no dishes and a delicious dish. But Beast Coast has yet to let down in this list, and on to meal 4 we went. So meal 4 was a buffalo chicken wrap. It was ordered more for my on the goes, my I need something I can throw in a container that maybe necessarily I don't have to cook if I don't want to, meaning I don't have access to a microwave. Even if we're talking, you want to get your blue collar spouse to stop stopping at the gas station and picking up stuff. This would be the perfect option because it doesn't have to be microwaved. It doesn't have to be kept warm. It doesn't have to be kept cold, really, as long as it's being eaten that same day. And it was the buffalo chicken wrap. So normally with a buffalo chicken wrap, I'm expecting fried chicken. I'm expecting some sort of pressed wrap. And I think this one, heated up, would be an amazing dish. But even cold, as the directions say to leave, it was an amazing dish. Add some maybe apple chips or some crunchy element on the side with this wrap, or regular chips if you want the baked chips, or whatever you like to put with a wrap. Add some extras to it on the side, and it would be the perfect lunch dish. For a full dinner, I'm not sure we could really go that far, but the taste of this was amazing. It was shredded chicken, very buffalo-y, very light. The wrap wasn't gooey from sauces or leaked juices from chicken. It was a perfect, crunchy, cold buffalo chicken wrap, but I believe even if you air fried it or put it in a panini press, it would be the perfect solution to a lunch problem that one may have, or a very quick light dinner option. And once again, Beast Coast has not let us down, and we move on to day 5. Next up on the list was meal number 5, a bold barbecue pulled pork dinner. And the good doesn't stop when it comes to these meals. Coming in at 285 calories, which is surprisingly low for how satiable and juicy and amazing this meal was. A total of 25 grams of carbs, 5 grams of fat, and 35 grams of protein. This meal knocked it out of the park. For under 300 calories, you had a saucy but not too saucy pulled pork, some amazing potatoes, some crunchy green beans that came with it, and there was texture, there was flavor, there was decadent potatoes, and it felt like a proper dinner with all of the necessities, your starch, your protein, and your greens. And there's really not much bad, similar to the rest of the meals on this list, that I can say about the pulled pork dinner. There was plenty of seasoning, plenty of taste, plenty of flavor, nice fatty, but obviously not fatty in the macro world feel. You've got the amazing pork shoulder that was chosen for the pulled pork. And I want to know where they got the sauce, because I could drink a bottle of that stuff. For the barbecue sauce, I want to say it's probably in-house made, and I would order 500 gallons of this meal if I could. Again, like I said, there are too many good options that I already ordered from Beast Coast that makes me want to go and order more. And I think this is beginning to set the trend for the local small business, straight to you type style meal kit service. If you really are looking for something to ease up your day in the meal kit world, this would be the way to go, finding a local one. But on to day 6, we continue. Meal number 6 on the Beast Coast did not let down, just like nothing else. Of all of the things I had, this was probably the most meh of them. But it wasn't bad by any means. It was just casual and normal, and there's only so much you can do with a taco. It was the lean ground beef tacos, coming in at 295 calories, again with a full meal that didn't make you feel hungry at the end of the night, coming in at under 300 calories. 11 grams of fat, 19 grams of carbs, and 30 grams of protein. For 295 calories, 30 grams is fantastic. These tacos allowed you to customize different things where you could add things like guacamole in, and obviously that would change the macros a little bit, but for the most part, the ground beef tacos had great flavor. They weren't too gooey on the taco shell front. They had all of the components separate that you can add in as much or as little as you like when it comes to tomatoes and lettuce and sour cream and things like that. And they were just perfect. They were everything you could think of out of a microwavable taco. They weren't squishy. I wish all of the other meals tasted like this, because this was the best way to end this meal kit adventure. And now I don't want to try other ones because it might ruin the love. It might ruin the happiness I got out of doing this adventure, because if I get another trifecta like one, we might not survive another video like this. However, that's really all I have to say about the lean green tacos. One of the things I did notice about these tacos that made them a little iffy to me is there was not enough veggies on them and not enough texture variation. Obviously, veggies, even when separated from tacos, will start to wilt on you and lose that crunch, and unfortunately that happened with these tacos. But normally a taco has rice in it, and the quinoa replacement choice in this variant was an amazing choice in order to keep calories down and keep protein up, and I have no really complaints about the swaps made in this case, especially for a meal that was 295 calories. On to the last one we go. Meal 7 was quite honestly the most surprising underdog of this entire video. I could not recreate this if I tried. Some of the other meals I could probably figure out how to do all of the swaps to make it just as calorie balanced, with probably a little bit bigger servings at home with a lot of work, which defeats the purpose of ordering a meal kit service. However, this one, I can't do. I can't replicate, nor would I try, because it was so damn good. When I am really dialed into my nutrition and my training, one of the things I always want is pizza. My husband loves to order pizza, loves to order pasta. Our relationship was founded on Domino's pasta and pizza and a little bit of KFC, let's be real. But I always struggle to be able to eat those types of pizzas and stuff with him, because I don't want to order a whole gluten-free thin crust pizza for myself, and there's just not enough protein in your average pizza slice. But I have found the solution through Beast Coast Nutrition. I would keep a bunch of these on hand if they were frozen, just to have available to me when my husband orders pizza, so I can sit and enjoy pizza with him as well. The buffalo chicken pizza. And now they also have a flatbread variation if you don't want as many carbs, but honestly, this pizza doesn't need to be substituted in any way, shape, or form. Coming in at 528 calories for this big ass pizza, and a shocking, I about fell over when I read these macros, 57 grams of protein in a pizza. I don't even care what the carb number is. If you were a pizza with 57 grams of protein in it and you taste good and aren't all mushy, I don't know where to go from there. Other than it was the perfect I want beer and pizza kind of night, but I'm health conscious and might have a vodka soda and pizza that has 57 grams of protein. This is the one dish I put in the air fryer because the only instructions were air fryer, and I know why now. In a microwave, this probably wouldn't have got the praises it did, which is why I want to give Fit Filet from Hummus Fit a second chance. Because the air fryer made the texture of this dish. However, the taste was purely made by Beast Coast nutrition. I couldn't have asked for a better pizza if I tried. And none of the other variations had anything close to a pizza. This was the perfect combination of things. It gave me relatively low calories for a whole ass pizza. It gave me 57 grams of protein. It gave me the Friday night movie night with my husband style that if I kept it here at home or ordered it once a week, I would have for when he wanted to order Domino's. It allows me to still be conscious and on my shit, if you will, as would my clients, and not have to give up on pizza nights with their kids or their family. You still get to enjoy a pizza and smash your fucking protein goal. And I wish, like I said earlier in this video, I wish everyone could experience Beast Coast. I do not have a singular bad thing to say, and I will be returning to order meals from Beast Coast. As my husband put it, why don't you just cancel ButcherBox and order meals like this every week? And that might be the case for a while. Because I need to be dialed in right now, and the meals from Beast Coast didn't have me missing anything. That, with the combination of some of the sweet stuff from Hummus Fit, I'd be set. And I'm sure a lot of my clients would too. It makes me sad that they can't experience this. But the question still stands. What is the best meal kit service out there? Well, we all know my answer. Beast Coast won hands down across the board on taste, on ordering ease, and on price. Realistically, without the 50% discount, Factor 75 would have been about the same price that I paid for the meals that I got at Beast Coast, and the meal quality was significantly different between the two. On top of that, with Beast Coast, I have the ability to just walk into a shop and pick up ones. I don't have to order if I don't want to. However, I can, and it's convenient that way, which brought up the score of convenience for not having an app and ability to order Beast Coast on a regular basis. However, they do have a reward system and a subscription-like system that would make people like me who are local ordering a lot easier. However, Beast Coast is not an option for everybody, and I can't verify that all local companies would be like Beast Coast. So if we're looking at the three that are most available to those in the US, I would have to say, given my current assessment and current meals that I have ordered, Factor 75 is not only the most convenient, but it is the cheapest across the board. It was tasty. The meals were pretty consistent when it came to how they were seasoned, how they tasted, what their macro profiles were. While I don't love all of the macro profiles, there are better options, of course, when you pick your meals. If you stay with the weight loss or whatever their lower calorie option is, you should be able to stay within a pretty decent range that you wouldn't bust too egregiously to the point that if you did bust, it would impact you at the end of the week when all of the averages come together. Now, if we're looking at all three, if you don't like subscription-based services that are difficult to cancel, difficult for you to remember to cancel, then neither Factor or Trifecta would be the answer to you, and Hummus Fit would be the option available, obviously, of the ones I tried. There are plenty of other services out there, and if this video does well, I will obviously go back in and do more. But when it comes to taste, consistency of the food textures, for those who might have texture issues, when it comes to the price, and when it comes to the satiability and how I feel at the end of the day with these meals, I feel Factor had a little bit more seasoning, a little bit more variety in food even than Hummus Fit did. And Trifecta we're not even going to talk about. The real kickers for things that are available to everybody would be Factor 75 and Hummus Fit. Hummus Fit serves people who want to order on a not as regular basis, maybe order 10 meals that you use as on-the-go style things, right? I think nurses who maybe want foods for the night they work, but they want to cook on the nights that they're home. I think even like EMTs and things that are on duty for 24 to 48 hours. Even with gamers, if you don't want to cook on the days you stream, if you're a streamer, or on the days that you're editing, to have on hand those meals, that a la carte style where you're not ordering meals every week, is more convenient. Also, that a la carte style where you have the same list of foods every week that you can order if you're ordering for you and a spouse is also convenient, because then you can have some staples that you know you like that you add in, and then maybe try one or two others along the way. Whereas Factor has a rotating menu that you may run into a situation where you forget to skip your box, but you forget to change your meals too, and end up with meals that you don't actually like. Or you might just run into a week that you don't like any of the meals and you have to skip because you don't want any, but then you have to figure out what to do for a week. So they both have their pros and their cons. And I would love to say that I have the perfect answer. But the reality is Factor 75 works for people who just want to order and not really think. Hummus Fit is the better option from a macro perspective, but their consistency after reheating was not as consistent as Factor's. So if you have issues with texture or taste changing, that might not be the best thing for you. However, I would be willing to give them a second shot, whereas Trifecta I was not. And Factor, I just don't love the subscription-based model. When it comes to ordering meal kit services, I like being able to pick the meals I want. And I loved the idea from Beast Coast where I could customize. If that was allowed with Hummus Fit, where they are a smaller company, I would definitely be more of the mindset to give them a second chance. However, when it comes to your everyday client, Factor 75 is the winner in this case. If there is not a local option available to you that you can support and has decent products just like my Beast Coast Nutrition. Now understand that before you go off and order from Factor 75 or any of these other companies, there was only one box ordered from each individual company. However, I tried to order as much of a variety of foods as I could to see what would happen for those who ordered in the future. And at this point in time, Factor 75 is the most convenient to people and best price to people. If Hummus Fit comes up in the world and there is no longer a $30 shipping charge, then maybe we would consider them taking the top spot here. However, taste-wise, I had more consistency and found better options through Factor 75 than I did with Hummus Fit for the most part. However, the Buff and Muffins alone for Hummus Fit were worth ordering that whole order. And that is my collection of trying meal kit services so you don't have to, and trying to rate them as much as I can for those who are on a weight loss journey and might be looking to make their life a little bit easier on the nutrition front. So if you enjoyed this video and want to see future comparisons of different companies and different experiences, such as what is the ultimate protein coffee for hot coffee drinkers, then you can like, comment, subscribe, and look forward to those types of videos in the future. And have a good one.